E-commerce tracking in Google Analytics. So the e-commerce suite of reports helps us understand a little bit more about what people buy on our website, what are the top selling products, what's the average order value, and other key metrics related to our shop. To access this report, you're going to go left nav, conversions, e-commerce, and we're going to start with the overview report. So the e-commerce overview report gives us a very nice high-level view of some basic e-commerce metrics. So we're going to look at things like the e-commerce conversion rate, 1.91%. We saw 34 transactions in this time period, generated $1,695 in revenue. Our average order value was about $50. We had 118 unique purchases and 126 products purchased. As we go down this report, we can toggle between a few different things. It starts off with products, so we can see some of our top selling products in terms of the quantity purchased. We can look at product SKUs, so in many cases a product could have multiple SKUs, so we can see the specific SKUs and how often they're purchased. Things like product category we can look at as well, and sometimes it really depends on your configuration, but sometimes that's the size of a product or the category of product that it falls within. It could be an accessory or a certain type of makeup foundation. And then source medium, we get a high level view of the different sources that send these sales. One thing we'll stop for a second and note is that when you're looking into campaign performance and source medium performance, this is not the best place to do that. You really want to be back over in the acquisition section of reporting. All this e-commerce data does flow there, but here we do get a very high level view of it. Let's jump into some of the other e-commerce reports, and first we're going to go to product performance. So that's left nav, conversions, e-commerce, and product performance. And here we're going to see specific products and the quantity that sold. So the Defense Mineral Primer sold 15, 10 unique purchases, meaning 10 unique people, bought a total of 15. The product revenue on that was $157. The average price, $10.53. In our particular example, you can buy different sizes. So the average price is going to be averaged out obviously based on the sizes purchased, and then the average quantity. So the average user bought 1.5 of them. So some bought 2, some bought 1, and we get that for each product name. And then we can drill into things like the SKU. So if we want to look at a specific product SKU, we get the same set of data. We're going to see the quantity and revenue and that. So this is a great section just to get an idea for what's being purchased. If you don't have another system that's tracking that, this can help you make inventory decisions and such. The sales performance report, which you access in the left nav, conversions, e-commerce, and sales performance. This simply looks at a day-over-day view of sales. So we can see that on 6/5/2016 we had $375 in revenue. So we just kind of get a day-over-day view. Not a lot to look at here, but it does give you a general idea of how much money is spent on a daily basis. Or if you had outliers, maybe you had a day. Here's a day where we had a lot more revenue generated. Chances are an email went out that day, something like that. The transaction report, so left nav, conversions, e-commerce, and transaction. So this is where we look at specific transaction IDs and get metrics. So transaction ID 1947, and this is sent from our shopping cart, so we can pair it up with our shopping cart and look at this transaction on that end. Generated $96 in revenue. We did not charge tax for it. Shipping was $6.95, and 3 different products were purchased in that. So what we can use this report for, and probably one of the only uses for it is, when we get really big orders, we may want to get a better feeling for, where they came from. So if you maybe are on a high volume site, but you do want to look at specific orders, and you can kind of pair this up to a customer and get an idea of how you acquired them, you can actually drill into a specific transaction ID and then look at a number of different metrics. So we can look at the nitty-gritty of this transaction. We know all the products that were purchased and the revenue generated. But with this little toggle up here where it says secondary dimension, we can actually look at the source and medium. All right, and this is going to tell us that this particular transaction, it does this at the product level because technically different products could have been added in via different sources and different sessions. So this particular example, they added to cart everything in the same session, and it came from our email list. But we could basically toggle down to the campaign level even, say, well, what campaign drove this? And because we have transaction or campaign tracking set up, we actually get the campaign number right here, which we could match up in our email marketing program. So you can get a lot of detail here on specific transactions. Sometimes it's too granular, but again, if you don't have a lot of sales, it may be something where you come in and you really want to understand where they're coming from. This is a great place to do it. So a few concepts to cover in e-commerce tracking. The obvious first question in a lot of cases are, well, I've got this e-commerce store, but I don't see any data in this report. And a lot of times that just means that e-commerce tracking hasn't been set up. We cover this a little more later in the technical part of this course, but there's two steps to that. One is enabling it in Google Analytics, and the second is implementing it on your website, which a lot of times your web developer will do for you, or if you're using a common third-party shopping carts such as WooCommerce or Magento or Shopify, a lot of times they make it real easy for you to get that set up and start sending that data. But we're going to cover that a little more in a second. And the second point to hit home, again, this is about understanding what people purchase on your website and not so much where they came from. So as far as marketing decisions go related to where to spend money and what campaigns are effective, we definitely recommend you spending more time in the acquisition reports. All this data does flow there, as we've seen in previous lessons, but this is more about understanding what people are purchasing. Average order value is an important thing to look at. Raising this, if you can raise this 10% in volume, it can be huge. So this is more about maybe merchandising and understanding that user behavior and what they're purchasing. So that covers e-commerce tracking in Google Analytics.